Hello, everyone, and college football is about to get underway. And on Thursday night at 6:30 in Piscataway, New Jersey, we will have the Rutgers Scarlet Knights versus the Temple Owls. Let's get into my predictions. Now, let's start off with your Rutgers Scarlet Knights, who are coming off a 3-6 season this past year in 2020, with 3 of those 6 losses being by single digits only. They had 26.7 points per game and 32.1 points per game allowed. They averaged about 199 passing yards and 142 rushing yards per game, 245 passing yards allowed, and 206 rushing yards allowed. They had a +5 turnover differential, and they were returning 92% of production from last year, some of the most in college football, and I believe 20 of 22 starters. They have 5 transfers coming in, including UNC cornerback Patrick Green, who would be a starter, but he is injured for week 1, and Joshua Youngblood, who was an All-American returner at Kansas State. They're going into their second year under Greg Schiano as their head coach. Now let's go to the away team, the Temple Owls, who are coming off a 1-6 season last year, averaged about 19.9 points per game and allowed 37.1. Had about 209 passing yards a game and 143 rushing yards. They allowed 224 passing yards a game and about 209 rushing yards. They had a -2 turnover differential and returning only 65% of production from the previous year. However, they have a lot of transfers, about 11, including one big one, QB Juwan Mathis, QB that used to play at Georgia, very talented former 4-star. And Rod Carey, their head coach, going into their third year. In his first year, they went 8-5, and then had the regression to last year of 1-6. Now, let's talk about some keys to the game, and first I'll go with Temple, which is their transfer quarterback, Juwan Mathis. Mathis is obviously a very talented quarterback coming from Georgia, and he was a former 4-star, and I believe he actually started the game before getting benched for Stetson Bennett, who eventually got benched for JT Daniels last year. Mathis is a very talented quarterback. He can throw, he can run, and he's going to give this Rutgers defense some trouble. Now, the only issue is, being his first game at Temple, how is he going to do? Is he going to step right in and look like that 4-star Georgia quarterback, or is he going to start off a little slow? And next, we'll get into a key for Rutgers, which is their offensive line play. Their offensive line was a big issue last year, probably their biggest issue, and the one they're looking to improve on the most, as I believe they have 5 or 6 offensive linemen in their 2022 recruiting class. But Temple is not known for their defensive line last year. They actually don't have a very good one. So I think if the Rutgers offensive line can play at least decent and give their quarterback Noah Vedral and running back Isaiah Pacheco some time, they should be able to win this game, being the more talented team. So now, how do I see this game playing out? Well, it's going to depend on what type of Temple team we see. Rutgers, we know what they're going to be. They're an experienced team, returning a lot of starters. That was a below average, I could even say average Big Ten team last year, just because of how close some of those losses were. And Temple is a team that was not good last year, but they have a lot of transfers coming in. And I think Rod Carey, their head coach, is a good head coach. They had a good season, 8-5 in 2019, and a lot of transfers. And that's one of the big reasons Rutgers was so good last year in their first year under Greg Schiano. They had a lot of transfers. And Temple has some pretty talented transfers like Juwan Mathis. So do we see a team that comes out guns blazing with some pretty talented players, or do we see an inexperienced team together that's kind of a mess and has to still bring everything back together? I think somewhere in the middle of that, I think leaning a little more towards kind of a little bit of a mess. Temple was just very bad last year, scoring not even 20 points per game and allowing 37. That's just not what you want to see for a team like that, and I don't think the transfers are going to make that big of a difference, especially in the first game. I think they can definitely get it together later in the season and have a decent team. I just don't see them beating an experienced team in the first game of the season at a sold-out crowd, which should be very loud for the first home game with Greg Schiano with fans in the stands. So I'm going to go with Rutgers winning this game by about a score, something like 34-17. I think this will be a decently high-scoring game. So I think the one thing Temple has, they have a decent offense with a lot of transfers into Juan Mathis. So I don't see this being like a 20-7 or like anything like that. I see that being a little higher scoring, 34-17, maybe even something like 40-20. Who knows? Something around the 30 to 42, like 10-20 range. That's what I'm imagining for this game. Rutgers just covers the spread, which is about 14.5, I think, right now. Rutgers wins by 17. So Rutgers cover the spread, and I believe they actually have a streak of covering the spread in their first games of the season. And I believe Rutgers was about 4-5, 5-4 versus the spread last year, and Temple was like 2-5. So yeah, I have Rutgers winning and covering the spread. So now I'm just going to go through a couple predictions for how I think certain players are going to do. I think Isaiah Pacheco's going to have a big game. He's probably very used to Rutgers' offensive line being very outmatched by the opposing defensive line. And this is a game where Rutgers' offensive line actually outmatches the opposing defensive line, I think. So there should be plenty of holes for Pacheco to run through. And once he gets ahead of steam, it is very hard to stop him. So it's a big game from Isaiah Pacheco. And I think we'll also see a couple big plays from Aaron Cruikshank or the Kansas State transfer Youngblood. One thing from Temple last year, they were not good at defending returns. They had a very bad special teams unit. And one thing Rutgers was very good at last year was kick and punt returns from Aaron Cruikshank. And now add a former All-American returner in there for a little dynamic duo. That's going to be not such a great matchup for Temple. I love to see a blocked kick. That would be so nice because I love when Rutgers used to block kicks so much with Schiano and in a couple years with Flood. So that would be a great thing to see too. So those are my predictions for Rutgers versus Temple. And subscribe for more college football content and Rutgers predictions. See ya.